Breaking, King Charles just destroyed Starmer, cabinet ministers fleeing Westminster. What happened at 11:47 yesterday morning will be studied for decades. King Charles issued a royal decree so devastating that 3 cabinet ministers immediately fled Westminster. The document, 23 pages that could shatter Labour's government before Christmas. But here is what nobody saw coming. This wasn't about protocol or ceremony. This was constitutional warfare, and Keir Starmer just lost the first battle. If you want to see how this ends, hit subscribe right now, because the next 72 hours will decide whether Britain still has a government or whether we're witnessing the collapse of modern democracy in real time. 6 days ago, Starmer pushed through emergency legislation expanding immigrant housing benefits. No parliamentary debate, no constitutional review. His justification, humanitarian necessity, but King Charles wasn't having it. The monarch, who waited 50 years to wear the crown, wasn't about to watch Westminster dismantle constitutional safeguards overnight. So Charles invoked royal prerogative, something no British sovereign has attempted in 70 years. The decree arrived by courier, hand-delivered. 23 pages of constitutional dynamite that detonated the moment Starmer's chief of staff broke the seal. Sources inside number 10 say Starmer went white. Actually white, like he'd seen a ghost. His exact words, "He is declaring war on us." King Charles had formally requested Parliament suspend all emergency legislation until constitutional review boards could examine the fast-track processes Labour had been using. The language was devastating, accusing the government of bypassing democratic safeguards established over centuries of British law. Within hours, the hammer fell. Constitutional lawyers across Britain confirmed the decree was legally binding under dormant powers dating back to Queen Anne. Starmer couldn't ignore it. He couldn't dismiss it, and he absolutely couldn't survive it. The Attorney General, Lord Hermer, delivered the verdict personally. Prime Minister, if you proceed without compliance, you'll face immediate legal challenge in the Supreme Court and you'll lose. But wait, there is another layer to this that makes it even worse. The royal decree didn't just target the housing legislation. Page 17 contains something that sent shockwaves through every government department. King Charles formally questioned the legitimacy of 47 separate emergency measures passed by Labour since July. 47 pieces of legislation that bypass standard parliamentary review. Everything from planning law changes to immigration processing reforms to economic stimulus packages. Charles wasn't just challenging one policy. He was questioning the entire legal foundation of Starmer's government. Professor James Mitchell from Cambridge called it unprecedented. The Crown is essentially arguing that 6 months of governance may be constitutionally invalid. He explained on BBC Newsnight, if the Supreme Court agrees, we're looking at legislative chaos on a scale Britain hasn't seen since the English Civil War. Think about what that means for a moment. Every regulation, every rule, every policy enacted through emergency powers could be struck down overnight, contracts invalidated, regulations reversed. Millions of pounds in government spending potentially illegal. The chaos wouldn't just hurt Starmer politically. It would paralyze Britain administratively. While Starmer rammed through emergency housing benefits for recent arrivals, British pensioners who paid into the system for 50 years are choosing between heating and eating. 81 year old William Davis, a Royal Navy veteran from Portsmouth, was found unconscious from hypothermia. His pension hasn't increased since 2019. His council flat is freezing, while he nearly died. Newly arrived families receive housing allowances of £2,400 per m on 3-bedroom flats in areas where British families have waited 8 years. Margaret Peterson, 67, from Newcastle. I voted Labour since 1979. Not anymore. They've abandoned us. Over 200 former military personnel are currently homeless. Colonel Richard Hampton, retired after 32 years' service, posted a video from his car where he sleeps. I served with honor. Now my nation has forgotten I exist. That video hit 4.7 million views in 36 hours, and through it all, Starmer stayed silent. No response, no acknowledgement, no plan. Just deafening silence that screamed louder than any scandal. Then something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. King Charles broke 70 years of precedent and addressed the nation directly, not through palace statements, not through carefully worded press releases. He went on camera. At 6 p.m. on Tuesday, every major network carried it live. Standing in the blue drawing room at Buckingham Palace, Charles delivered what insiders are calling the most politically charged royal speech since Edward VIII's abdication. For generations, this nation has balanced compassion with responsibility, tradition with progress, Charles declared, with unmistakable steel in his voice. But when emergency powers bypass the very institutions designed to protect our democracy, when legislation moves faster than debate, when the voices of ordinary Britons are drowned out by political expediency, then someone must speak for constitutional order. The words hung in the air like thunder. Palace insiders revealed Charles had been planning this intervention for weeks, meeting privately with constitutional scholars, former prime ministers, and even members of the Judicial Committee. The optics are absolutely catastrophic. A king with a 73% approval rating just publicly questioned the legitimacy of a government struggling to maintain 30% support. But that is not even the worst part. What Charles said next changed everything. "I am reminded daily," the king continued, "of letters from ordinary citizens, from veterans who cannot find housing, from pensioners who cannot afford heating, from families who have waited years for support while watching resources redirected to recent arrivals." He paused, letting the words sink in. Their voices deserve to be heard in Parliament, not silenced by emergency procedures. It was devastating, calculated, precise. Charles wasn't just defending constitutional process, he was positioning himself as the voice of forgotten Britain, the monarch who remembered his people when their government forgot them. Within minutes, phone lines to Buckingham Palace crashed from the volume of supportive calls. The palace website received so much traffic it went offline for 40 minutes, and on social media, something extraordinary happened. Videos of Charles's speech were being shared by people who had never posted about politics before. Grandmothers, veterans, working-class families, all sharing the same message: the king speaks for us. The response was swift and devastating. Within 20 minutes, the pound dropped 1.8% against the dollar. Markets hate constitutional uncertainty. £4.3 billion was wiped from the FTSE 100 before trading closed. Labour MPs started receiving hundreds of calls from constituents demanding they back the king over Starmer. 3 junior ministers immediately requested meetings with party whips to discuss their positions. Social media exploded faster than anyone could track. King Charles right trended globally for 18 straight hours. Protests erupted across Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, and Glasgow, not against the monarchy, but in support of it. Thousands of people holding Union Jacks and signs reading "Defend our Constitution" and "Charles speaks for Britain." International reactions poured in. The European Parliament issued a statement expressing concern about Britain's political stability. Canada's Governor-General quietly contacted Buckingham Palace offering support. Even the White House released carefully worded remarks about respecting democratic institutions. For the first time since Brexit, Britain looked genuinely unstable. Genuinely chaotic. Genuinely out of control. Inside Number 10, the atmosphere is pure panic. Ministers are at each other's throats. Foreign Secretary David Lammy allegedly threw a phone across the room during a cabinet meeting. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner was overheard telling West Streeting, "This is his Suez moment, and he is too blind to see it." WhatsApp groups with names like Constitutional Crisis Team are plotting something far beyond damage control. They're discussing succession, how to remove a prime minister mid-crisis without destroying what is left of Labour's credibility. The question isn't if they'll move against Starmer. It is whether they can coordinate the knife before he drags them all down with him. Defense Secretary John Healey looked physically sick during Wednesday's emergency session. Sources say he kept checking his phone, reading messages, and shaking his head. The cabinet isn't unified anymore. It is fractured into factions, each one trying to save themselves from the wreckage of Starmer's leadership. Here is where it gets worse. Multiple sources confirm that Chancellor Rachel Reeves held a secret breakfast meeting Wednesday morning with Lord Mandelson, Tony Blair's former right-hand man and Labour's ultimate kingmaker. They met at a private club in Mayfair, not Downing Street, not Westminster. Somewhere off the grid. The subject: how to manage a leadership transition without triggering a general election. Labour would lose catastrophically. Mandelson, who has orchestrated more political coups than anyone alive, was seen making calls from his car immediately after the meeting. By Wednesday afternoon, 3 former Labour prime ministers had been contacted for their views on the crisis. This wasn't damage control. This was regime change in motion. And Starmer, locked in his office, consumed by the royal decree, had no idea his own party was building the scaffold. The leaked documents from the Home Office show what hasn't been reported yet. Internal memos reveal Starmer's team knew the emergency housing legislation violated constitutional review protocols. They knew it. And they pushed it through anyway. One memo dated the 18th of November explicitly states, legal advisors recommend delay for constitutional assessment, but political timeline requires immediate passage. If these documents are real, and if they show what multiple sources claim, then Starmer didn't just bypass constitutional safeguards accidentally. He did it knowingly, deliberately, with full awareness of the violations. Think about what that means. A prime minister who swore an oath to uphold British constitutional law intentionally circumvented the very protections he vowed to defend. The optics would be absolutely devastating. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak is playing this perfectly. While Starmer flails and Labour implodes, Sunak appeared on every major network Wednesday evening, looking calm, measured, and disturbingly prime ministerial. The Conservative Party has always respected constitutional monarchy and parliamentary process. He stated with calculated precision, "We stand with King Charles in defending the institutions that make Britain Britain." The polls tell the story Labour wanted to bury. Conservatives surging to 38%, their highest numbers in 18 months. Labour collapsing to 24%, their lowest since the Corbyn years. For the first time since Starmer took office, Conservatives hold a 14-point lead. But here is the final twist that changes everything. Sources close to Buckingham Palace reveal King Charles has scheduled a second televised address for Friday evening. No topic announced, no advanced warning, just a notification to networks that the king will speak to the nation again. Palace insiders are calling it unprecedented, concerning, historic. What could Charles possibly say that he hasn't already said? Some speculate he'll call for Starmer's resignation directly, something no monarch has done in modern history. Others believe he'll announce he is taking the constitutional dispute to the Supreme Court himself, and a small group of constitutional experts whisper about something even more dramatic. That Charles might invoke Crown authority to dissolve Parliament entirely, forcing a general election that would almost certainly destroy Labour. Nobody knows what is coming. But everyone knows Friday night will change Britain forever. The countdown is almost over. Constitutional crises don't end quietly. They end with resignations, elections, or structural change. Sometimes all three. So here is the question that matters. Did Starmer just destroy his career by challenging the crown? Or will Parliament rally behind him against what some are calling royal overreach? What do you think happens next? Does the king back down, or does Starmer resign before Monday's emergency session? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what is really happening in Westminster right now. The mainstream media won't tell you the full truth, but we will tomorrow. We're breaking down the leaked Home Office documents everyone's talking about. What they reveal will blow your mind. Make sure you are subscribed because this constitutional crisis is just getting started.